everybody, what's up? It's Grace, and right now I'm going to be doing a spooky book recommendations for the spooky upcoming season. So I do have, I believe, 2 previous videos about spooky book recommendations, and I think I'm reusing some of the books. But since those videos, I've, had new people come onto my channel, so this is basically just my favorite books that have a spooky element in them that I think are perfect for this time of year. So if you're into that sort of thing, stick around. Okay, so the first book I'm going to talk about is Vicious by B.E. Schwab. I read this like 2.5 years ago, I believe. This follows 2 guys, college students, and for one of their research papers, they are coming up with a thesis on how to spark adrenaline or, something along the lines of that. And so what they come up with is if they die and they're gonna be reborn with like supernatural abilities. Kind of like that movie that's coming out. I know Nina Dobrev is in it, but it's kind of similar. Where basically they have to have a near-death experience to be able to come out of it with extraordinary abilities. And then you fast forward 10 years later, and one of the best friends is actually breaking out of prison, and he's going to get revenge on the other guy. And we also follow a young girl in this. She has an ability herself, and she's aiding, I believe it's Victor, in trying to get revenge on Eli. Just a bunch of fun. There's definitely a spooky element into it. And the characters are so bad, but you also root for them at the same time. They're morally gray, they're not good, they're not bad, well, I feel like Eli's a lot worse than Victor. But they all kind of started from a good point, but their good intentions didn't turn out that way. And it's very good, so I recommend this for the spooky season. The next book that I'm recommending is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This is a psychological thriller, very twisty sort of book. So if you like that sort of thing, this is the book for you. This follows a guy named Scott. He's an investigative journalist. And one day, the daughter of a very well-known horror film director, his daughter goes missing, and then she's found dead, and then it's ruled as a suicide, but Scott doesn't believe that because there's a bunch of evidence leading to him thinking that there was, foul play involved. This book is also told in photographs and emails and text messages, so it makes it more interactive and fun and spooky. The ending threw me off, and when I ended it, I was just lying in bed for a very long time being like, what? I have really good memories of when I read this book because I was road tripping to Oregon in October, and so it was all fall, leaves, raining, spooky vibes. I had a great time. Great reading experience while reading this one. Next book I recommend, I will not say a lot about because I went into it blind and it's so hard to explain. I feel like you go into it without explanation, you'll get a lot more out of it. That is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. It's so short, but essentially it follows this middle-aged man set in England, and he's returning back to his hometown to attend a funeral. And while he goes there, a bunch of memories come back to him about this young girl named Letty and their adventures there and stuff that he never questioned as he aged, but now that he's back in that setting, he begins to reflect on everything. And I think the message in this book is so great, and there's definitely an underlying theme of darkness and spookiness, and the characters are not bad, but morally gray. I mean, there's some bad characters, but it's just a very interesting, spooky read that is profound and has a larger meaning. So I definitely recommend this one. The next book that I recommend for a more mature audience, or if you're allowed to read this sort of thing, because when I was young, I was allowed to read and watch whatever I wanted, which I think, well, not whatever, but rated R stuff. And I feel like, in a way, my mom didn't sugarcoat anything. So I feel like I got a lot out of it. She definitely wouldn't let me read what I'm about to show you if I was under the age of 16. But that is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torr. And basically this book follows a girl. Her job is to be a sex cam girl, but there's a reason to why she has this job. She has murderous tendencies. So if she leaves her apartment, she just wants to kill people, so she has to find a means to make money at home, and so this is it. And actually this is a thing, and at the end of it you can research a lot of it, and gosh, people make so much money. It got so dark all of a sudden. But anyway, we follow this girl. She cannot leave her apartment, so she gets everything shipped to her, like water, everything is shipped to her through Amazon or whatever. And one day, one of her clients is he's weird, and as she gets to know him, she's watching the news, and this young girl goes missing, and she knows that it's the guy that she's been webcamming with. So in order for her to like, you know, try to find this girl, she has to leave her apartment. Again, she has murderous tendencies, so there's consequences to that, but she's after some sicko. So is it bad that she's gonna like has the intention to murder him, you know? But this definitely is more of like a thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. I read this super quickly, but again, I would recommend this for mature audiences. Like I would say if you're like 16 and older, 15 and older, you're good. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Ask your mom or dad. The next book I'm recommending to you, I cannot recommend enough. It is so great, and the sequel just came out, and I'm currently reading it. And that is the book that I recommend right now is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I'm probably not saying that right. This is set in the Victorian era. Follow a young lady named Audrey, and she's basically being primed to be the perfect like Victorian lady, but she has the desire, it's very frowned upon, but she has a knack for forensics. Her uncle happens to be the person that finds out how a person died, and so she apprentices for him. And like her dad doesn't know, well, her dad and brother do know that she has an interest in it, but not to the extent that she practices it. Then a bunch of women start being brutally murdered, and the killer is obviously Jack the Ripper, and she goes on the case to find him with her uncle and then her uncle's other apprentice. And it is so interesting. There's a little twist. It's just a fun, spooky read. I love anything that's set in the Victorian era. I love that our main character has a lot of wit and she's very clever. I cannot recommend this enough, and I am so excited to finish the sequel. And the next 3 books I'm going to talk about, I haven't completely finished because they are a bunch of little short stories compiled in one book, but from what I've read, I've really enjoyed. And first being The October Country by Ray Bradbury. If you're into like beautiful writing that's lyrical and also extremely spooky, definitely recommend this one. It's very like just satisfying to read. The next one is a book of ghost stories by Roald Dahl. This is interesting. I didn't very much like the first story. It was kind of like meh, but the ones that I've read after that were really fun and spooky, and I do love his writing, and he just has such a adventurous writing style to where whatever I read of his, I just feel like I'm there and like everything just appears. Can't wait to finish this one and move on to the next story because I love him and I love his writing. And the next book is Slasher Girls and Monster Boys by a bunch of YA authors, and I'm a little bit more than halfway through this book. I've had it for a while, but I like, you know, reading it leisurely. I do love spooky stuff year round, but it really is more prominent like obviously when it's like October or September. Anything leading up to it. So I have been kind of just reading a story here and there, and I love absolutely every one that I've read. I think my favorite is probably the Alice in Wonderland retelling or like inspirational one, and I recommend it immensely. And the last book that I'm going to recommend to you, I read on a whim and I was so pleasantly surprised by it, and it's actually one of my favorite books, and that is A Madness So Discreet by Mindy McGinnis. So this is also set in the Victorian era, and we follow a young girl named Grace, and she has been put in an insane asylum. I'm not going to tell you why, obviously, but for completely wrong reasons. What's horrible is the people that are close to her put her in that insane asylum. Basically, at the beginning of this book, she will not talk to anyone, and then she starts to babble, and so the doctor is sent to give an lobotomy, and then he sees something in her that he feels is going to be useful for his practice. She's very intelligent, and he just sees something in her that he hasn't really seen in anybody else. And so he takes her to his, it's kind of like a sanctuary. She helps him investigate murders and stuff along those lines, and it is so interesting and fun, and just a lot more than you think. There is a trigger for sexual assault in this, so just there's that. I haven't read this, well, I read it last year, so some things are a bit hazy for me. I hope I explained it right. I just know that this book was a lot more than I was expecting, with underlying themes. There was a great friendship in this. There was little to no romance, basically. It was just her development as a person, because, you know, she went from such a bad home life to finding a purpose, and it's very good and spooky and great, and I cannot recommend this enough. Also, the main girl is named Grace, and it's set in like an insane asylum, sort of. It's just very interesting and fun. So those are just some of the books that I think are great for October, or basically anything leading up to Halloween. I am going to do a TBR video on what I want to read that I haven't yet, or hopefully I can get to them. If you've read any of these books and you want to tell me about them, I would love to know, and I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!